It was an event that shook Hollywood and left the world gasping. The legendary Clint Eastwood, a cinematic icon, clashed with provocative host Joy Behar on The View. What was supposed to be a routine interview to promote his new producing project turned into an unprecedented confrontation that went down in television history. No one was prepared for how quickly an innocent conversation would spiral into a full-blown emotional storm. Watch until the end to find out how it all unfolded, and leave your thoughts in the comments. The View studio buzzed with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. Blinding spotlights flooded the stage, and the audience, a mix of fans, skeptics, and casual viewers, whispered excitedly in their seats. At the center sat Clint Eastwood, the 95-year-old legend whose presence radiated quiet dignity. His silver hair was neatly combed, his gaze as sharp as it was in his Western days. Across from him was Joy Behar, her cold smile and piercing eyes hinting at the storm brewing. She clutched a sheet of notes, but her sharp, provocative demeanor suggested she was ready to turn this into a spectacle. Backstage, producers exchanged nervous glances, sensing that today's episode might spiral out of control. "Clint, welcome to The View," Joy Behar began with feigned warmth, her voice dripping with a sweetness too saccharine to be genuine. "You're here to talk about your new producing project, right? A film about war heroes. Very patriotic, as always." Clint nodded, his face impassive. "That's right. It's a story about courage and sacrifice. I think those stories need to be told." "Oh, of course." Joy raised an eyebrow, her tone sharpening. "But let me ask you, don't you think your projects are, how should I put it, a bit outdated? I mean, all this focus on heroism, patriotism. The world's changed, Clint. People want something new." The audience fell silent, sensing the tension. Clint tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing, but he responded calmly. "I tell stories that matter. To me, it's not about trends, it's about people who gave everything for others." Joy let out a scoff, leaning back in her chair. "Well, that's sweet, but let's be honest. Your views, your approach, they feel a bit conservative. You're known for supporting certain political figures. That's no secret, is it?" The audience whispered, some chuckling nervously. Clint's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I'm here to talk about the film, Joy. Not politics." "Oh, but it's all connected, isn't it?" Joy leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "You create these heroic narratives, but some say it's just propaganda for your personal beliefs. What do you say to that?" Clint took a deep breath, his fingers lightly gripping the armrests of his chair. "I do what I believe in. If that sparks debate, fine. But I'm not here to convince anyone." The audience murmured, sensing the rising tension. Joy, seizing the moment, decided to dig deeper. "Oh, Clint, don't be so modest." Joy laughed, but her laugh was sharp, cutting like a blade. "You're not just a director. You're a symbol, an icon. But some say your icon status is just a facade. Take your charity work, for instance. You donate to veterans organizations, right? But isn't that just PR to look like the good guy?" An uncomfortable silence fell. The audience froze, some holding their breath. The other hosts, seated nearby, exchanged uneasy glances, but none intervened. Clint leaned forward, his gaze turning to steel. "Joy." His voice was low, firm as granite. "I don't play to the crowd. I support veterans because I've seen what they go through. It's not about PR. It's about respect." "Respect?" Joy raised her brows, her tone now openly sarcastic. "But you can't deny it earns you points in certain circles, right? I mean, it's convenient, being a hero to some and a provocateur to others." The audience buzzed again, some clapping, others muttering in disapproval. Clint's lips tightened, his face showing the first signs of anger, but he still held himself in check. "I don't choose who supports me or who doesn't," he replied. "I do what I think is right. If you want to dig into that, that's your choice." Joy didn't back down. She tossed her notes aside and leaned closer, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "Oh, come on, Clint. You know how it looks. You're a man from another century, with outdated ideas. You support people who divide society. Why not just admit your views are a way to stay relevant? The silence in the studio became oppressive. Even the other hosts, usually quick to back Joy, looked uncomfortable. The audience split. Some cheered her boldness, others bristled at her attacks. Clint stood slowly, his presence radiating a quiet, menacing strength. Joy. His voice trembled with restrained fury. You want a show? You're getting one. But I won't let you twist my actions for your ratings. Oh, this isn't about ratings, Clint. Joy threw up her hands, feigning innocence. This is about truth. People want to know who you really are. Are you a hero, or just an actor playing the part? Enough! Shouted another host, Sonny Hostin, trying to defuse the situation. Let's get back to the film. But Joy ignored her, her eyes locked on Clint. What, Clint, does the truth hurt? Or are you just not used to being challenged? Clint stood, his eyes blazing with resolve. He took a step toward Joy, and the entire studio held its breath, waiting for what would come next. Joy. Clint's voice dropped to a near whisper, but each word cut through the air like a knife. I've lived 95 years. I've seen war, I've seen death, I've seen people sacrifice everything for others. And I won't stand here letting you demean me or those I respect for your show. The audience erupted in applause, but Joy didn't flinch. Oh, such pretty words. She laughed, though her laugh was nervous. But it's all theatrics, Clint. You're no hero, you're just an old man clinging to the past. Clint shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving Joy. You've shown who you really are, Joy. And it's not me clinging to the past. It's you clinging to cheap tricks to stay afloat. He turned to the audience, his voice growing stronger. I came here to talk about a film, about people who deserve respect. But if this show is about humiliation and lies, I don't belong here. With that, Clint turned and walked off the stage. The studio fell into stunned silence. Joy opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The audience began to whisper, some clapping, others muttering in shock. Producers scrambled backstage, unsure how to salvage the broadcast. Watch Part 2 to see how Joy tried to recover and what happened after Clint left the stage. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and let us know in the comments. Did Clint do the right thing by walking off, or should he have stayed to fight? The silence in the View studio was deafening after Clint Eastwood stormed off the stage. His final words, "It's you clinging to cheap tricks to stay afloat," echoed like thunder. The audience sat frozen, torn between shock and admiration. Some clapped for his dignity, others whispered, stunned by his dramatic exit. Joy Behar, her cold smile gone, clutched her notes, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and confusion. She hadn't expected the legend, known for his steely calm, to put her in her place so decisively. Well, Joy tried to regain control, her voice shaky but quickly masked with forced confidence. Looks like Clint doesn't like tough questions, does he? The audience's response was mixed. Some laughed, backing her sarcasm, but most remained silent. Sonny Hostin, one of the other hosts, leaned forward, her face showing clear displeasure. Joy, maybe you went too far, she said quietly, but the microphone caught her words, and the audience buzzed. Joy whipped around to Sonny, her eyes narrowing. Too far? I'm just doing my job, Sonny. People want the truth, not fairy tales about heroes. The truth doesn't mean humiliating someone. Sonny shot back, her voice firm but measured. He came to talk about his project, not to fend off personal attacks. The audience erupted in applause, and Joy, sensing she was losing ground, forced a smile. She leaned back in her chair, trying to appear unfazed, but her fingers nervously gripped her pen. Okay, she said, raising her hands. Let's move on. We've got plenty more to talk about, right? But the studio wasn't ready to settle. The audience whispered among themselves, and producers backstage scrambled, passing notes to one another. The cameras, usually smooth in transitioning to the next segment, frantically captured close-ups of Joy and the empty chair where Clint had sat. The tension was palpable, and everyone knew this wasn't over. Backstage, Clint Eastwood stood in a dimly lit corridor, his face stern but composed. His manager, a young man in a sharp suit, paced nervously beside him, whispering, "Clint, are you sure you don't want to go back? We can fix this, say it was a misunderstanding." Clint shook his head, his voice low and resolute. "I said what I needed to say. I'm not going back to feed their ratings." He turned and walked toward the dressing room, his steps slow but steady. In that moment, his figure, tall, unyielding, recalled the characters from his old westerns striding into the storm without looking back. But even in his calm, there was a storm of emotions, anger, disappointment, and an unwavering certainty in his principles. Meanwhile, in the studio, Joy tried to steer the show back on track. She moved to the next guest, but her voice sounded strained, and her jokes fell flat. The audience was restless, and even the other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg and Sarah Haynes, looked uneasy, exchanging quick glances. Whoopi, usually neutral, finally spoke up. "You know, Joy," she said, her voice low and serious, "Clint Eastwood is a man who's earned respect. Maybe we should have focused on his work instead of digging into his beliefs." The audience erupted in applause again, and Joy, unable to hide her irritation, snapped back. "Oh, please, Whoopi. This is a talk show, not an award ceremony. If he can't take the heat, he shouldn't step into the kitchen." The line drew a mixed response. Some laughed, but most of the audience murmured in disapproval. Social media was already exploding with posts about the clash, with the hashtag Clint vs. Joy trending rapidly. In the studio, the tension hit its peak when a viewer in the back shouted, "Joy, you went too far!" Joy spun around, her face flushing with anger, but she quickly composed herself. "Oh, come on, people, it's a show! We're here to entertain you," she said, but her words rang hollow. At that moment, the camera briefly showed Clint's empty chair, a symbolic image that spoke louder than words. The producers, sensing the show was spiraling, called for a commercial break. The screen went dark, but the tension lingered in the air. When the broadcast resumed, Joy and the other hosts tried to act as if nothing had happened, but the shadow of the conflict loomed large. Joy made a quip about a hot episode, but her laugh sounded forced. The other hosts steered the conversation to safer topics, but the audience remained unsettled. On social media, Clint's exit had gone viral, with clips of his speech and Joy's sharp retorts racking up millions of views. People were divided. Some admired Clint's dignity for refusing to tolerate humiliation, while others argued he ran from tough questions. This clash became more than just a TV moment, it became a symbol of the battle between dignity and the toxicity of modern media. Clint Eastwood, with his quiet strength and unyielding principles, reminded the world that self-respect is not weakness but power. Joy Behar, in turn, embodied the culture of talk shows where provocation and personal attacks often overshadow substance. The event left many questioning, is it worth sacrificing humanity for ratings? And can media strike a balance between entertainment and respect? Subscribe so you don't miss news stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did Clint do the right thing by walking off, or should he have stayed to fight? Write what you would have done in his place, and give a like if you support his decision. What do you think of Joy Behar's behavior? Were her questions justified, or did she cross the line? Did Clint Eastwood do the right thing by leaving the studio, or should he have stayed to defend his position? And why do you think talk shows so often resort to personal attacks for ratings? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss what this moment means for media culture.